Good day, folks, and welcome to another edition of Lumberjack Logic. I have a special guest for this show. I want to tell you, globalists and establishment rhinos will not give up their power easily, people. They are making their last dying grasp to save this, and it is time for patriots in Michigan to rise up in a major way. We're going to cover a very consequential story here today. It's going to be a fight. The closer you better information you have, and the further you are removed from it, the worse information you'll have. And I'm going to show you why that's so important as we go through this. The other thing, the issues displayed here in Michigan, this is the story of every other state. And it's especially true of these swing states, be it Georgia, be it Pennsylvania, be it Wisconsin. I've covered Robin Voss. We talked about the Jake the Snake Corman out in Pennsylvania and so on. Establishment rhinos are working against you in every way they can. And so I want to mention my sponsor really quickly, MyPillow, because the greatest election integrity warrior I know of on the face of God's green earth is Mike Lindell. So go check out mypillow.com. Use promo code Lumberjack for big savings. And I'm going to bring in my guests here, David Clements, Professor Clements, as it is. So welcome to the show.
Hey, Neil. Good to be with you.
So I'm going to pull in this article because there was a big court decision just yesterday that took place, and a judge finds Kristina Karamo was removed as the Michigan GOP chairwoman. We're going to go into the backstory on this because it is so important that you know that this is not a legitimate court ruling in my mind. But a Kent County Circuit judge ruled Tuesday that Kristina Karamo had been removed from the Michigan Republican Party's as the Republican Party's chairwoman on January 6th. And I find the date to be really interesting. The real insurrection here occurring on January 6th in the state of Michigan, and barred her from continuing to assert that she holds the position. I want to state really quickly, I like Kristina Karamo, but if you don't, that's okay. I'm talking specifically about yanking power from the people. That's what this is about. It's not about who you support at this point. This is changing the rules, changing laws, creating outcomes so that you can get your establishment candidate to the front and boot the person you don't want through nefarious means. The decision from Judge Joseph Rossi settled, at least temporarily. We're going to tell you, you can make a difference on this, people. It is only temporary right now. A leadership dispute that's been devouring the Michigan GOP for 6 months, including for the beginning of a presidential election year. Rossi said there were sufficient votes to unseat Karamo in a January 6th special meeting of the party's state committee. That's a lie. And it was a decision, and the decision was permitted by the bylaws of the Michigan GOP. That is a lie. The judge's decision for now means that former U.S. Representative Pete Hoekstra is the chairman of the Michigan Republican Party in the eyes of the law. And I should mention, because I do believe that Pete Hoekstra was actually one of the people who voted for the Patriot Act, unless I'm wrong on this. Patriot Act Pete, he goes by.
You're absolutely correct. He voted for the Patriot Act, and he also supported the war in Iraq after the weapons of mass destruction were confirmed to be a hoax. And so he's got a long history of coming down on the side of the deep state. And I started looking at his social media, Neil, to see if he had been outspoken about the rigged and stolen election. And what you'll find is Pete Hoekstra has been silent on the issue. But for whatever reason, Donald Trump, who many of us are pulling for, gave him an endorsement, which has further muddied the waters.
So, you know, and this is interesting because the reason I have Professor Clements on is he is, quite frankly, a lot more in touch with the people on the ground in the state of Michigan than I am. And I need somebody to walk us through this and what's going on there. But I am going to add this back into, here, actually, I'm going to go to this first. I want you to watch this quick clip.
Have a leadership dispute which occurred on January 6th. The call to convention, per the rules, went out on January 5th by Kristina Karamo. She sent it through the uncontested MIGOP secretary, who gives legal notice of these meetings. So now those convention packets went out and the counties have elected their delegates.
Okay, so on that, I'm going to add this back in now, and I want to go to this. So this is from the secretary. This is what they recognize. So the real Michigan Republican Party, and as labeled here, pretend Michigan Republican Party. You can see the chair is Kristina Karamo, the chair is Pete Hoekstra, the address, and so on. I also want you to notice here, we've got donation target origin date. We got the 7th of June of 77 compared to January 30th of 2024. Tell me which is the legitimate here, people. And then here, I want you to look too, Michigan Secretary of State committee type, state political party right here, independent PAC right here. Yet the independent PAC is acting as the actual state Republican Party. Recognized by Michigan Secretary of State as the state political party? Yes. So even Dana Nessel recognizes Kristina Karamo, who is totally opposed to her, does not recognize this others. This is just on file too. And I should mention, it's not really about Dana Nessel. It's about what's on file in the Secretary of State's office. So Professor, do you want to comment on this a little bit? I do want to note too down here, largest donor to HRCC in 2023, DeVos family, $342,000. That's the same family that owns the Amway Corporation out there. I don't have an axe to grind against them. They are billionaires, I will tell you that much. And they have been very influential in Michigan politics for a long, long time. So it seems to me that this whole thing with Pete Hoekstra is a hoax.
Yes.
Well,
there's a lot to unpack, so I'll try to get through it as quickly as I can. There was a state convention to elect the state chair last year, and Pete Hoekstra threw his hat in the ring. Matt DePerno threw his hat in the ring, and so did Kristina Karamo. The people spoke out on behalf of Karamo. She was elected. And in fact, Pete Hoekstra was booed from the stage. So wildly unpopular. You can find the video of that. Well, Karamo inherited about $600,000 in liabilities. So there's about $35,000 on the books, and almost every major donor, courtesy of the DeVos family and many others, were told to not support Kristina Karamo because she's about America first. She's about Trump. She's about election integrity. And there was a building. It's about $1 million asset that she started investigating because they had to make sure that they could cover their liabilities. And she was not getting any answers from the old regime. And as soon as she started getting asking questions, the coup was on its way against her. And so there were questions about her leadership. So they scheduled a meeting for January 13th of this past year to basically put all her cards on the table and see who the leadership was going to be. Knowing that the usurpers weren't going to be able to get a full quorum, they scheduled their own meeting on January 6th, rearranged the rules, violated the bylaws, and had a very, very small number of people show there and vote for someone other than Karamo. Karamo was not deterred, and the Michigan GOP basically went ahead with their regularly scheduled meeting on January 13th, and Karamo was reaffirmed 59-1. That was not
9-1.
Yes,
and this was at the real meeting that is actually by the actual state party. This is what's really pissing me off about this, Professor. We are talking about, because I have been preaching long and hard, get involved in your state party apparatus, because that's where the decisions are made. That's where you can make the difference. It's the smallest governing body. When you go to your precinct caucus, you get elected as a delegate. That gives you the power to then go to your next convention, which is your like it's county or whatever convention. And then from there, you can get elected as a delegate to go to state convention, where you actually get to vote on endorsing candidates. And I tell everybody they need to get involved in this stuff. And that's what these people are doing out in Michigan. And then they're getting the freaking rug swept out right from underneath them because they're forming a fake convention and voting there. And that's somehow good. And this judge who's got ties to all these people in Michigan, all these, establishment rhino operatives, is making this decision, which is clearly not the right decision. Like I could explain this to my 10-year-old right now. I could say, okay, here's this, here's X, here's Y, who gets to make the call, and he can get this right.
Yeah, well, you're absolutely right. But regardless of the will of the people, and just so people know, that January 13th had the sufficient quorum. It had the representation that you would need for it to be a legal vote. And again, it was issued, the notice for the meeting was issued by the secretary of the Michigan GOP. That was not issued for the January 6th meeting. So what do you do if you're corrupt? You get the RNC involved. In fact, you get Ronna Romney, who was the former state chair of Michigan, And many of the question marks about the asset, this $1 million building, were tied up with Ron Romney. So there's a question of whether or not there's been some level of fraud in Michigan. So you've got this self-serving person that's done nothing for Republican politics and getting people elected, now picking, guess who? Pete Hoekstra to be the chair of the party. So the RNC is violating the bylaws of the state of Michigan, which clearly sets forth that it has to be, you have to be elected by the state delegates. And they picked the third place finisher, who was the least popular candidate amongst Michiganders. And so, of course, the Michigan GOP through Karamo challenged this, and the case was heard yesterday of all days by John Rossi. Well, we did some digging into John Rossi. That's the judge. And he's got ties to all of the money and interest, whether it's the DeVos family, people that have supported his campaigns in the past. And he gets to make the decision that the delegates don't matter. And Pete Hoekstra is now the chair, at least for another few days, because there is an opportunity. Even though the primary took place yesterday, Trump beat Nikki Haley. The delegates that you send up to the national convention to cast for the president, that election is going to take place this Tuesday. And just so you know, there are now competing conventions, because you had one that was scheduled months ago by Kristina Karamo that was going to take place in Detroit. Hoekstra has scheduled a competing convention in Grand Rapids. And because of this judge's decision, everything's up in the air. All I can say is that wherever people migrate to, they need to cast their vote and once again elect Karamo for the third time. And this is very reminiscent of Trump. Like, how many times we have to elect the real people to provide leadership. So this might be the shortest reign of any chairperson. It could be like a 4-day reign for Pete Hoekstra, and I hope that's the case.
That being the case, if everything Pete Hoekstra is doing, according to this judge, is right, and everything Kristina Karamo has been doing is not recognized, they have to go to the Hoekstra convention. Hoekstra, Hoax, Pete Hoax. They have to go to the Hoax convention. This is freaking nuts. And that one's taking place where?
That one's taking place in Grand Rapids. And so I haven't talked with the Karamo folks on what my course of action would be. I think right now, because of the lawfare that's been deployed, you're going to have a hard time convening delegates in Detroit. I think they're going to have to, just cut their stakes there, send everyone to the Grand Rapids one, and make sure that the vote establishes who you want. And if you want Hoekstra, vote for him. But here's the thing, Neil. Karamo was asking for Hoekstra to show up to the Detroit convention and saying, look, let's just listen to the will of the people, put it up to a vote. And if you get the votes and I'm out, I'm out. So she's been very, very clear. So now the question is, are they going to be electioneering the convention, the caucus here in Grand Rapids to eliminate Karamo supporters? I don't know, but I would be extremely vigilant.
Yeah. I mean, again, I want to just state this again. This is Pete, Patriot Act Pete, as they call him. He was using the Michigan GOP franchise and logo to pretend that a super PAC, a political action committee, was the party. Karamo, Michigan GOP's delegates are recognized by the Secretary of State, and Hoekstra's are not recognized by the Secretary of State. The delegates, we're going to be meeting in Detroit to affirm the Michigan GOP chair. But now, apparently, gosh, if you're in Michigan, folks, get this figured out. I mean, this is bad. I want to, one last thing here. I'm going to add one more clip into the show here.
Why would Trump partner with the corrupt establishment rhinos who turned their backs on him in 2020? Why would he pick them over his base, who's been fighting tirelessly day in and day out for him? Why would President Trump support Yob and Hoekstra's political lynching of Kristina Karamo?
And that's the question. Now, so one of the big jobs of actually the national party chair and state party chairs, their number one job is fundraising. That really is the number one job. That is what the whole thing revolves around. That's why, we were supposed to keep Rhoda because she was such a great fundraiser, even though her fundraising was going down. But that being said, it is a big thing. And I think what happened in Michigan, from just what I have heard and seen, is that these big class donors would not give money to the Michigan GOP with Kristina Karamo, and Pete Hoekstra has a promise of some money. Am I correct on that? I think you had mentioned that too.
Yes, and so like, look, I think the question that has to be raised is, um, there was plenty of money on the books prior to Karamo, and we can concede that. The party was well funded during the 2020 election, yet you had rampant fraud in Wayne County and Detroit. None of the money was going to actual election integrity efforts. They were going to the same consultant class. And so the people that are most upset in Michigan are the consultant class that are used to getting millions of dollars to basically do their thing. And that wasn't happening under Karamo. And so I think Trump's got 3 or 4 advisors that really are wedded to the old game of it's all about money. Let's pretend that the rigged machines, have nothing to do with election outcomes. Let's not talk about mail-in ballots. Let's just talk about generic fundraising. And I've have sources that say that Hoekstra has basically got a guarantee to the Trump campaign that day one he could have $10 million in the bank accounts. And so I don't think Trump is like scouring, going through all of the candidates in the country. He's got advisors that are coming to him saying, look, there's no money in Michigan for the get out the vote effort. So let's get behind someone who can get us some money. I think this is a tactical error on Trump's part because the messaging is so, frankly, it's hypocritical. You've got a bunch of people that are standing by Trump because of a usurpation of his race on November 3rd, 2020. And the very people that are standing behind him in Michigan are Karamo supporters. And so it's very, very bitter.
Karamo's gone right after. I mean, she wants, 1-day voting, paper ballots, hand counts, everything that everybody on the election integrity front wants. That's what she wants. And that's what I hear President Trump talking about at his rallies. So this is really the candidate who he should be supporting, who would do the things that he wants to do. He doesn't throw Karamo under the bus. He doesn't say bad things about her. I have noticed that. But I think he is. He's listening to these people who are tied to the old way of doing things. And it's just all about the Benjamins. It's $10 million. And I will admit, okay, I'll give him the fact that money makes a difference in politics. I get that. Okay. But that doesn't mean it's the only thing. It doesn't mean it's the most important thing, because otherwise Hillary Clinton would have pounded him in 2016.
Well, can I interject one thing?
Yes.
Kristina Karamo was one of 50 chairs in the country that overtly said that the 2020 election was rigged, that Trump should be recognized as the legitimate president, wants to get rid of the machines, wants to get rid of mail-in ballots. That's priceless. The fact that you have an entire organization that can use its bully pulpit to give voice to the voiceless. Like what amount of money can you place on that when an entire organization with one of the swing states, mind you, is coming out swinging day one? I would rather have that than some $1 million consultant putting out some ads for people that frankly aren't loyal to Trump.
Republican consultants are the dumbest people on the face of God's green earth. They're either, number one, incredibly stupid, or number two, they are the opposition. And I say that with all sincerity. People who follow my show know this because I keep saying this. I've worked in marketing. I can't believe the stupid ads they run, the stupid ways they spend their dollars. Look at the freaking the RNC, the Republican National Committee, and Rhoda Romney McDaniel spending our money on freaking haircuts, jet trips, all this kind of crap. And the Democrats, who aren't conservative, who aren't supposed to be as good with the money, are spending it on get out the vote efforts. So if get out the vote is so important, then why the hell aren't they spending their money there? This is maddening. Yeah. It's freaking maddening. I can't take it anymore, Professor. I can't.
Well, and Neil, here's the thing. Michigan is, for all of the dysfunction, is the brightest state outside of maybe Georgia. When we're talking about MAGA, America First people taking over the parties, they're doing everything that every pundit out there says to do. Get involved, get local. They've done that. Yes. And they've run into the establishments. It's like Star Wars. The Empire has struck back. And the question is, are we going to have a Return of the Jedi moment where the people don't, pack up their bags, don't pout because of this court order? Because in 4 days, they can literally change the trajectory of the state and deliver a knockout punch to Pete Hoekstra and the establishment.
It's huge. It's huge. So really quickly, I do want to thank Mike Lindell again. MyPillow, MyPillow.com. This is the MyPillow 2.0 with the cooling fabric technology. I bet you've got one of these. It's my favorite pillow. I mean, I had MyPillow before MyPillow was a thing, man. Way back in like 2012, I got a MyPillow. I've never looked back. Anyways, you can use promo code Lumberjack, save up to 66%. Professor, thanks so much for joining us. This is an important issue, people. If you're in Michigan, you have got to get out and get involved. We have got to not allow the establishment to just rear its ugly head and take away power from the people. We'll see you on the next episode. Remember to subscribe if you're new. Peace out.